Hey, David, you're good to go now.
All right. Hello, everyone. I'm David Prather, Vice President of Sponsorships for ARMA Metro New York City. I'll be your closing session panel moderator. Yes, sadly, this is the last session, but every session I've been to has been great. In fact, to prepare for this, I simply went to Christy Robinson's session on effective virtual meetings and Lauren, Cindy, and Jennifer's session on public speaking. So I hope all of you also had a thoroughly enjoyable 2 days for this free event made entirely possible by the generosity of our sponsors. Again, I encourage everyone to stop by their booths, visit their websites, and learn more about how each sponsor can help you with your business needs. Now, let me introduce our three panelists. Lauren Barnes. Lauren is currently Director of Information Governance at S&P Global and is also an adjunct professor at Queens College. Previously, she was Vice President for Records and Information Management at Credit Suisse, Electronic Records Manager at Lehman Brothers, Records Manager at American Express, sounds like a broken record here, and a consultant for RIM software provider Milliken and Associates. She holds an MLIS from the Palmer School at Long Island University and a BFA from NYU. Welcome, Lauren.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
Great. Next, Chris Bednar. Chris is a Senior Manager, Global Records Management for Bain & Company and manages the Records and Information Management Program for Bain's global consulting and administrative functions, as well as Bain's e-discovery process. Well, all that should keep you busy. Chris has a BS in Music Education from Berklee College of Music, a Master's of Library and Information Science from Simmons College, and is a certified records manager. He's also been a member of ARMA International for over 20 years, serving at the chapter and regional levels, and is currently Region Director for ARMA's Northeast region, of which, of course, this ARMA Metro New York City chapter is a member. Thanks, Chris.
You bet. Thanks, David. Love your intros.
And finally, Leslie Smith. Leslie is Information Governance Retention Analyst at Proxgower LLP, and is responsible for assisting with the implementation and management of the firm's Global Disposition Program and ensuring firm adherence to its retention policy. Always a challenge. Leslie also serves as a member of ARMA Metro New York's Membership Committee, where she manages hospitality, new member outreach, and, most importantly right now, the annual Confirm Conference. Great to have you, Leslie.
Hi, David. Hi, everyone. Happy to be here.
All right, let's get started. It's question time. So, anyone can take this. What was the most surprising or informative takeaways that you learned during Confirm?
I'll take this. I think the most informative, and I think for some people might be surprising, it's that I learned during Share Moore's session that AI can have a bias, which I think kind of is a little contradictory to what we think AI is. It should be a neutral force. Technology should be a neutral force in general. And it kind of, but if you think about it, if you go a level deeper, it makes sense because whatever you put into it is what you get out. So if you only have a certain kind of data, then it'll only recognize that kind of data. So for those who weren't able to attend, it basically boils down to if you only feed the program, let's say people from the United States, for example, and you're trying to get more information or trying to get it to work towards people in general in the world, then that data is going to be biased because it's only accounting for one group of people.
Yeah, the conference was a hidden gem, that session. I mean, anyone else?
Well, I'll jump in from yesterday, the session with Ron and David Smythe on the ephemeral messaging and so forth. And, what does that present to us and what is some of the legal backgrounds? It was very interesting. It was quite broad in terms of the discussion but bringing in some of the legal precedents, which though I'm not an attorney. I can sometimes talk like an attorney, but it was more what was evident that my takeaway was that there were decisions that an organization needed to make about those messaging apps. And sometimes those decisions weren't always a decision you kind of want to make because there aren't all the features you may need, but yet your business facing folks who are selling and whatnot want to have that engagement channel with their clients and customers. So depending on how you're regulated and where the risk level for litigation, I apparently, obviously would enter into your decision-making equation, just as any other risk, decision. How much are you willing to take on, and what is the benefit of doing that? But I found it very interesting because sometimes I know I feel like I'm the only one in the room trying to figure that out. And it was great to see Ron and David sort of lay it out from a bit of a higher view and with some hardcore experience.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. There's the balance between selling and making money and not complying and paying fines.
Yeah, right.
Chris, anything to add?
So, yeah, for me, I was totally blown away by the presentation yesterday on Microsoft 365 and using SharePoint. So the session led by Atlee, I think his name was, and John Mancini, who came on very at the tail end.
Yeah.
But so I'd been thinking about for years the abilities or the potential of moving things to the cloud and being able to control better. That's what we're in the business of, is controlling information. And the more it moves to, in some ways back, but to a central area where we actually can manage it versus little storage pockets here and PSTs there and everything else. So it was really eye-opening for me to see that firms are actually starting to do this, and that they have a map and have planned it out. So the whole, I had heard of privacy by design, but I hadn't heard of compliance by design before. So and just overall modernizing your IG program. I've been looking at throwing band-aids on things here and there as we grow as a firm. But I really need to look in, and I'm stealing an idea from the keynote as well. I'm looking at this whole moonshot idea. It's like, let's not just keep adding band-aids to our current process, but let's step back and re-envision the whole thing. So that's one of the key things I plan on doing, is rethinking, well, let's not just try and see what can I do to fix something that's broken now, but let's step back and say, well, what should we be doing overall, whether it's possible today or not. Just put that out there and say, well, how do we get there? How can we get there? It's a 2-3 year plan maybe, but it's better to have that than to go like, well, we got this problem today, and so I'll fix that, and then tomorrow you got another problem. I like this. I really love this whole moonshot and modernizing idea.
Yeah, and I agree. The two Microsoft sessions, that and the one from Carl Mazzanti and Greg, both, everyone's in some way or another using Microsoft, and just understanding all of the advances that Microsoft has rolled out really in the last year, I think, is really important. So, and you mentioned moonshot, so that's a good that's a good transition. So, next question is sort of, what were the best questions or statements that you heard from attendees or speakers? For example, moonshot. We want to take a stab at that one?
Yeah, so I'm gonna feed off of the the keynote speakers who were also emphasizing the healthy disregard for the impossible. I think it's almost like a call to action. It's almost like a challenge for us to think beyond what we are used to. And I think that's something that we all struggle with. We get comfortables and we're creatures of habits. Human beings are in general. And I think sometimes the impossible is not really impossible. It's just something that we haven't thought of. It's something that we are not used to exactly. And if we have a healthy disregard for the impossible, maybe we challenge that mentality that we have. Maybe we challenge the firm, our employers, to think a little bit beyond their own limits of maybe it's for budgetary reasons, but maybe on our end, we can kind of try to work around that, try to get creative with our solutions. So I think it's a dare for everyone to kind of try to judo flip our concepts and try to make us better workers, smarter workers in general.
Yeah, it reminds me, about 10 years ago, I was at a Big Four firm, and there was no way they were going to move no information was going to go to the cloud. No way. But, of course they did, just like they moved from paper to CDs from the 80s to the 90s, and then CDs to web, and, 90s to 2000s. The technology change really makes the business, more efficient. So that's, I see exactly what you're saying. Any thoughts from anyone else?
Well, I like what you were saying, Leslie, in terms of, being willing to see the impossible. There's a couple of interesting ways that I have found that has helped me navigate through the most recently. There's a big, there's a huge opportunity, but huge challenge. So we have the, when we talk about, cloud, platforms, cloud storage, cloud, software, from an IT perspective, there are a lot of boxes that get checked with that. And oftentimes from a information governance or a records and information management perspective, those checks are sort of like, oh, okay. But there are now more and more opportunities in terms of managing that information from a life cycle perspective. I mean, that's been, and it's not just records, we need to look at the whole picture. And it's now this quote opportunity that the cloud presents because our colleagues in IT are embracing it for their own reasons. So the impossible is like, all right, how do I integrate my priorities, IG priorities, into this big initiative? That's the impossible, because it's not always done. But interestingly, the impossible just is a matter of figuring out those building blocks and knowing that sometimes some of them or even all of them fall down and you need to rebuild, and maybe a little differently. 1.5 million years ago, I actually used to sew a lot. I love textiles and so forth, so sort of a natural thing and to do. And I actually wasn't too bad at the time. But one of the things I learned from a woman who was a neighbor who sewed a lot, she said, you have to assume for every seam you sew, you will rip it out 3 times. And it was like, that's impossible. Impossible? What do? I sew and I realize that's not right. And I rip it out 3 times over the course of making an outfit or whatever. So I'm finding the impossible is knowing those building blocks, knowing those seams will have to be torn asunder because we need to rebuild. And sometimes I'm afraid I'm not going to have enough energy and wherewithal to get that done. So that's another part of the impossible. But hearing you, Leslie, talk about, I thought the keynote was great and got much of what you did too, but I kept trying to match it up with me and it wasn't always matching. And then I thought, well, maybe that's part of the point. So
torn asunder. Now there's a good statement. All right.
Yeah, I think that also brings us back to the moonshot mentality, that we need to think about what we're doing, how we're doing it strategically. We need to incorporate the IT department in our initiatives because we need buy-in from them, because if they decide to be on board, everything will just run smoother, I think. And in terms of tearing your seams up and then sketching them again, I think that also you can kind of think of it as like it's your strategy. You kind of wove that into your strategy, your concept, and I guess it's a way to manage disappointment, because you're probably not going to get it right on the first shot. And to your point about exhaustion, we all go through it. We're trying to convince 100 different people to do something for 100 different reasons. I think that's the value of teamwork. Like you shouldn't be aiming for the moon by yourself. I think not just your team needs to be incorporated and you need buy-in from your team, but people in other departments too. Everyone at the firm, I think it's important for them to realize why we're shooting for the moon. And I think that would help with exhaustion, because not everything's on you.
That's right. You gotta get everyone going in the right direction.
And to add a little bit to that is the whole concept of working in an agile way. There was at least one or two of the presentations I attended that mentioned that. And if you're using agile in the way you go about your projects, you're not designing something and waiting for it to be 100% complete before you launch it. You're going out there and you're getting your most viable product out, pushing it out and seeing what sticks and what doesn't, so that maybe, to go back to Lauren's analogy, you're only taking out 2 stitches instead of the whole thing, but you're then revising where that goes. And it gives you some successes as well. So you can say, well, this worked, this didn't. So let's try, you keep that overall vision in place, but we're going to get there by this way and that way.
Perfect. So, those are all really good points. The next question I'm going to ask Lauren first, because she's in the same industry I am, and of course, might as well leverage our network out there. What do you feel you learned that can be immediately applicable to your organization? Starting tomorrow, next week, next month. Anything that really stuck out?
Well, I agree. So there were a couple set. Well, now I don't know what to say. I have about 4 thoughts, and there's only one mouth, so I've got to figure out which one I want to say first. I think the overarching thing of the moonshot is an engine, but how, in a way, to propel you. But then what do you do literally and actually? So the presentation around a SharePoint and a 365, we're in the midst of that. So there are things that validated what we were doing, and then things I thought, oh, I should think about it that way. So that's a right away thing. We are constantly being challenged, and it's probably why it was so important that how it struck me around the various messaging apps. Some of the work that the folks who are out in the field for S&P Global are actually like reporters. So they use WhatsApp, they use, WeChat, they use, I don't even know all the name. It's sort of like learning all these video games when my kids were at home. I mean, it's like, I have no idea, but I do have a bit of an idea. And that idea is both, all right, we're not regulated in that space. So that means it's probably okay from a regulation perspective, but there is still litigation risk. So we're having those discussions right now. So that session, to have some kind of, bumpers around where my instincts are, and then also how do we want to support the business, because that's key. And I must say, I fear that a lot of the things that Christy said one shouldn't do, I'm doing all the time. So I have to work on that too. So hence I had many things on my list that I could apply right away. So those are just the top for the moment.
Sure. Perfect. Anyone else? I mean, obviously everyone's in a little bit of a different industry here, but Chris or?
Yeah, I mean, we're at the same point. I mean, we're just migrating to the cloud to 365, and we're in the right spot to really start thinking about re-envisioning the whole thing. And we have some new people on board, and we keep growing. And this is, I guess, it's never a bad time to re-envision things, but for us, it's particularly a good time. And I think a lot of the things that we've learned over this last year, in digitization especially, and we've had to do it, versus just thinking about it in the past. It's like, oh, wouldn't this be great? Well, now in the last 12 months, we've done a lot of things that we kind of were forced to do. And I think that gives us a better sense of saying, well, we did it, so we can do more. And I think the appetite is there.
Mm-hmm. Leslie?
Yeah. So my biggest takeaway in terms of implementation, I think further into the future is it's my biggest takeaway, because I attended the Web3 session, and I thought, first, fantastic speaker, but also very informative in terms of the techniques they're using to share data, to kind of verify the information. And I think that kind of brings into, I think those same techniques are very much used in something like knowledge management, which is a different aspect of the IG field, I would argue. So kind of verifying information with ourselves, kind of pinpointing who the data or information belongs to. I think those same techniques could be used in IG in general, about sharing information, sharing knowledge, making sure that it's verifiable, that it's accurate, that sort of aspect.
Right. Okay. Yeah, those are all, couldn't agree more. And, I think everyone just needs to think, well, how does this apply to, my organization or the industry I'm in, whether I'm regulated or not? There are just a lot of great points out there that you can take back and, work into your, hopefully your daily routines. So,
I think I'll just say that the idea, the idea of a conference, even under these difficult means, actually became an opportunity for a lot of folks to join in, which was really stunning. I mean, that was a stunning thing yesterday, at the beginning, when people in the chat, in the comments section, was saying, hello from Wyoming, hello from Florida, hello from wherever. And I thought, well, I haven't traveled anywhere in more than a year, but boy, it feels like the world is coming together. So one of the things that the biggest takeaway really is that I right now am not always looking for pragmatic and practical know-how advice. I like it, don't get me wrong, but I think that we rarely have time to get above the fray and think about something broadly, to think about something reflectively around, all right, where is this impact? Not just from my company or organization, but how do I see myself, or how can I make an impact on this on this big scale? I don't mean to be self-aggrandizing. I'm just talking about thinking, and how do we want to shape that? And this conference helped with that, right? It's partly is not feeling alone. it's having all these amazing colleagues. I mean, I'm seeing some of the comments. There are sessions that people are talking about that I didn't get to. So I'm envious all over. I would like to talk to everybody and get all that stuff coming in. And this cannot be underestimated. And I really think, even in this virtual environment, I've got to hand it to the ARMA board. They've done a great job in selecting the apps and setting up such a dynamic program. I used to be on the board of over, X period of time ago, and I'm not now. So now I can compliment the board. But I really think that the interaction and the generosity around all this has been stupendous, and that has been nourishing. So I just wanted to give a bigger picture.
No, thanks for that. And yeah, it's been a really good conference. Is there anything, let me just ask, sort of, each of you can say, we got about 5 minutes left. What was your favorite part of the conference, and why? We had morning mindfulness, we had all the sessions, we had trivia.
Well, actually, David, we are running out of time, and I'd like to bring us home a little bit, stemming off of what Lauren said. I think that was a great commercial for ARMA and the benefits of being an ARMA membership. I don't think I could have said anything more, but we do have a slide to share that pretty much says everything that Lauren just said. Why should you be a member of ARMA? If you're not already a member of ARMA, please consider it and connect with us at arma.org. But we are, in fact, a community of people who think this way. There's like one of me at Bain, but I get to talk with all of you, and I get to hear and listen to what you're thinking and what you're doing. I get to read and look at join all the different education programs that are out there, but more importantly, we're all fun, empathetic people. We think the same way. We know what our challenges are, and we get to talk about them. You see a number of other things here on the list as to join us. If you're not already part of the 5,000 members, join us. There's a lot of value here. From international and virtual programs to eventually when we get back together and get to meet in person at the local level. Some of the newer things, industry groups and some members only content, certainly other reasons to join and become an ARMA member. Again, this conference was the best plug for that. So hopefully everybody got a lot out of it. And I think we'll turn it to Glenn to close us out.
Yeah, and I was just going to say, if you're curious about my background, okay, it's compliments of Kirkland and Ellis. It was the host of our last live ARMA at Noon lunch event, right? So who misses those? But we'll turn it over to Glenn from Kirkland and Ellis, who can give us our closing remarks.
Thanks, everybody. So as the conference draws to a close, it's my pleasure to make a few final remarks here. Let me begin by thanking everyone for their participation. I think it's fair to say our conference this year has been an amazing success. We're very pleased with what turned out to be a seamless shift from our in-person annual conference to a virtual format. So thanks again also to our keynote, Michael Clark and Elliot Danner, for opening our conference this year, and a special thank you to every one of our session presenters. Their willingness to share their knowledge and expertise made for a very informative, thought-provoking, and engaging 2 days. Our program was underwritten by the generous support of our many sponsors, so I also want to extend our gratitude again for their support and involvement. And if you haven't had a chance yet to connect with them, please do so after the conference. My sincere appreciation also goes out to the ARMA Metro New York City Board of Directors and chapter members. They worked tirelessly for weeks and months planning this conference, and going fully virtual was new territory, but they rose to the challenge and put on a really exceptional event. And finally, I'd like to thank each of you for attending our conference this year and bringing your expertise to our gathering. I encourage you all to take this new knowledge you have acquired during these 2 days and be a change agent back in your organizations. Every organization needs change agents, people who rethink and redesign and restructure the way things work. The trick lies in knowing what you want to change and how, and believing you're capable. So remember, you as organization leaders, subject matter experts, and skilled practitioners have the vision, knowledge, and the experience to help us pave our way into the future. We definitely hope to see you in person next year. Thank you so much again for attending. You truly are what keeps the association alive and well, because we need that interest and that engagement. So thank you very, very much. Hope to see you in March 2022 for our 26th annual conference, hopefully in person. Until then, be well and be safe, everyone.